is from someone who calls himself Dr. B. That's B-E-E. He says, John, your conversation with Keith about Book E was a bit on the dull side. The entire segment can be summed up in 2 points. A, this is an important document for practical work, and B, don't stop doing what it says. Well, that's just wonderful. But it doesn't deliver any real insight into the text, and there's plenty to be had. For instance, you could have discussed the slight flaw the method described in Section 2. You could have talked about extensions to the outdated course of reading. For instances, Erdmann's History of Philosophy is not only expensive but difficult to find, but it obviously lacks commentary on the more recent and important trends in the philosophical literature. The AA curriculum is a bit stagnant, and modern students will find other texts more helpful and newer translations more lucid. Moving on, you could have discussed the utterly ridiculous first sentence of Section 3, the natural feedback between Sections 3 and 4, and personal experience in the form of lessons learned. Instead, you choose to walk through each section giving a brief description, but little explanation or evidence of understanding. Regardless of the heavy criticism above, I think that Keith's point about the importance of exercises in Book E to ritual practice make the segment worthwhile. Too many modern texts skip over the step of training the mind, and people tend to forget that all the groundwork that is prescribed by Crowley as a preliminary to even the simplest banishing ritual. Putting on a silly hat and spinning around in circles is easier and much more fun than sitting still and controlling your focus, which is the first clue that Crowley didn't intend the rituals to serve as little plays or simple visualization exercises. As an aside, the OTO rituals do work as little plays that require no yogic training, but that's because they serve a different purpose. I can't even remember the last time I actually saw someone vibrate a god name during a ritual, but I guess that might be covered in a later show. In general, keep up the work and raise your standards. Dr. B. Well, I'm sorry you did not enjoy the conversation or you found it to be below your standards. I appreciate the feedback, and we'll see what we can do about meeting your standards. Thanks again, Dr. B. And the last email is from a freighter FN. He says, 93, John, and thank you for continuing to produce your excellent podcast. I really appreciate the fact that your shows serve as a forum for serious, intelligent, and highly relevant discussions of magic and the Thelemic community. In addition to listening to the new episodes as they come out, I've been working my way through the archives from start to finish. A few of my favorites are Keith 418's lecture on the Goetia, Richard Kaczynski's on Crowley's magical practice, T. Allen Greenfield's discussion on the history of Wicca. Today I listened to Keith 418's Nietzsche for Thelemites lecture while cleaning the kitchen and found it very thought-provoking. Keep up the great work. Well, thanks for the email, Freighter FN, and this is a reminder to everybody. You can go to the Thelema Coast to Coast website and download every podcast that has come out. They are all available and freely downloadable. The RSS feed keeps about the last 20 or so. So as new podcasts come out, some that are older fall off the list. But again, you can go to the Thelema Coast to Coast website and get all of the podcasts there just by clicking on the podcast links and then going through the listing and finding the show number and or date. So that's all of today's feedback. Thanks to everybody who sent an email. I really appreciate the feedback. Again, I want to encourage everybody to take a few moments and let me know how the show is going, what you like, what you don't like. I especially appreciate that email from Dr. B. After all, it's your feedback that lets me know how I'm doing and helps influence the future of the show. And also, do call the voicemail. I love to get voicemail messages. 206-600-4216. Now, I need to give you all a warning about the next month or so. The podcast may be delayed. There was already a delay between the last one at the end of April and this one. It's already been almost 3 weeks, and that's because some classes and some other responsibilities of mine. And starting this weekend, over the next 4 weekends, I'm going to be out of town, culminating in 10 days in California again. On June 6, 2006, Jupiter's having the first Thelema Coast to Coast meet and greet. So That will be delaying some of the podcast. I hope to get one more out before I head out to the West Coast. If not, the next podcast will be in mid-June. So, again, I apologize about those delays. I encourage you all to go back and listen to previous shows if you haven't heard them in the meantime. As anybody who's been listening for a while knows, that Latex Records has been a sponsor of the show. They've given a large number of CDs to the podcast to play and to give away to the listeners. If you're interested in winning one of these CDs, all you have to do is send an email to podcast@Thelema Coast to Coast, put CD giveaway in the subject, and inside the email body, give your full name and mailing address. I have 3 more CDs left, giving Mystified, that I played at the end of the last show, away today, and I have that winner. And I don't know if this is the winner's real name or their craft name, but the listing has the first name as Mongo up in Vermont. So, Mongo, you are the winner of the Mystified CD. And the CD that I'm going to be playing at the end of the show today is from a group called Little Tin Box, and the album is called Action Music. I will speak more about that at the end of the show. Okay, now that I've rambled on enough, it's time to move into the program content. First is going to be a quick interview with Anita Craft. She was on previously talking about Babalon Rising. Babalon Rising is in just a month or so, and so I wanted to have her on again and just make sure you all were aware of it, for those who didn't hear the listing before. I think the festival is going to be pretty cool for those who can attend, and so I wanted to make sure everybody knew about it, and they had enough time to register and go if possible. Also, I have the first interview from outside of the United States. It's a brief one with a gentleman named Peter Martensson. He is one of the organizers of the Thelemic Gathering of the Tribes in Europe. It was my first Skype interview, so let me know how the sound quality is. I think it's pretty good, although the way Skype handles silence may be problematic. Let me know. But Peter is with a group of Thelemites who are getting together in Sweden. This is I think this is the 4th event that they have had like this. They're kind of been intermittent. A number of them were in Sweden, one was in Norway, and they're looking to make this an annual thing. So if you're in Europe and you can go, it's in about a month, I encourage you to contact them and check it out. And if you're in the United States and can head over to Europe, again, I think it would be very cool if some of the Thelemites in the United States could head to it. So I have that interview, and then the last interview is a very, very interesting one with a fixture within the Thelemic community for well over the last decade, a Soror Nema. She's written a book called Maat Magick back in the mid-90s, and it introduced the kind of the Typhonian idea of dual currents, and we kind of get into that. We talk about what Maat Magick is and just kind of get an overview of what her magical system's all about, including the organization she's in. So I thought that was a really interesting interview, and she's also open to questions. So after you listen to the interview, if there are any questions that you have, feel free to email podcast@Thelema Coast to Coast, and I will get those to her and have her on the show again to answer them. So, without further ado, here is Anita Craft. Anita, 93, welcome back to the podcast.
93, John. Thanks for having us back again.
Now, Babalon Rising is just a month away, so I wanted to have you back on the show to give everybody a reminder and talk about the lineup, just in case some people haven't heard about that. So can you just give a brief overview again of what Babalon Rising is?
Sure. Babalon Rising is a festival being held in French Lick, Indiana, at a festival site called Our Haven, which you can get to at ourhaven.com. And it's a pan-Thelemic festival. We've invited people from all across the Thelemic community to get together and celebrate, and a weekend of, Thelemic brotherhood and sisterhood. It's being put on by a public benefit corporation called the Aleister Foundation, which is set up to provide grants to not-for-profit Thelemic organizations. So basically it's a fundraiser to raise money to then make donations to non-profit Thelemic organizations.
Now, those are nonprofits that are just in Indiana or nationwide?
No, well, initially it's in Indiana, but if somebody, say, from like Illinois or Ohio wants to apply, then what we have to do is just register in those states.
Okay.
So we'll register in other states as needed.
Okay. What lineup of speakers and presentations are you going to have?
Well, we have what I think is an excellent lineup. Our main speaker is Lon Jaquette, who's going to be doing 5 different presentations, including one on his new book on the Key to Solomon's Key, Secrets of Magic and Masonry, which I've heard is just excellent. We also have Soror Nema, who wrote Maat Magick, from the Tiffonian OTO community. He's also a founding member of the Horace Mott Lodge in Cincinnati in Ohio.
She's also on this podcast.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. I'm glad you were able to get in touch with her. She's a fascinating person and is definitely an elder of the Thelemic community.
She definitely has a very interesting perspective, and that's why I wanted to have her on the show, and also from your suggestion previously. So it's actually this show that she's on.
Oh, great.
And you also have some other guest speakers, correct?
Right. We have Richard Kaczynski, who did A Curse Perturabo, which was an excellent biography on Aleister Crowley, and also just recently had a new book come out on the Detroit OTO community. We have a band called Incus, really excellent band, Middle Eastern, Native American, African, and Eastern type of music. They are coming in from California to play, and they're just wonderful. We have some local speakers. We also have a man named Michael Manor who runs a Kadishi kind of sacred sexuality group who's going to be there and is going to be speaking. We have a group called Stinky Beetle Tribe, which is a fire-tending tribe out of Indianapolis, which really doesn't quite describe them. I had the chance to see them this year. They've tended ritual fires at Starwood and Elf Fest and other festivals, and they actually do fire shows, poi, spinning, fire swords, flaming whips, all kinds of stuff, and they perform all night long around the fire. And so they're a lot of fun, and they'll keep the excitement going around the fires at night. And then we have some other local people, Eric Friedman out of Starry Arch, out of St. Louis, who's going to be doing a class. I'm actually going to be doing a class on the Star Ruby. Andre Vitamus is another guy who is going to be doing a topic, and he's out of Columbus, Ohio. Natalie, a local member, is actually going to be doing an introduction, Thelema for neophytes, an introduction to Thelema, because we'll have a lot of people at the festival who actually aren't that familiar with Thelema. So since it's a Thelemic festival, we thought maybe a lecture, a class on what is Thelema would be a good thing. So lots of good stuff, lots of entertainment besides the workshops going on, and I think definitely be a great festival.
Now, just to review some of the logistics, this is a camping festival, though.
Definitely a festival. It's outside at a nature sanctuary. It is camping. There are hot showers. There's water. There are restrooms and things like that. But yes, it's primitive camping. The only electricity is actually on the stage. So people need to bring tents and sleeping bags and that type of thing. Now,
they also need to bring their own food?
Yes, there's food. There's a food vendor, though. We actually have a food vendor out there. So there will be somebody actually vending food, and good food. I had it this weekend. But yeah, they need to bring food, coolers, that type of thing.
All right. And then also the place that it's occurring at, are there any restrictions on who can attend or anything like that?
This is actually an adult-only event, which is not all that common. A lot of our Haven festivals children are allowed, but this is an 18 or over event. You have to be 18 to come in. We just feel like the activities and the things that are offered at this festival, we preferred it the first time we did it to be 18 and over. So children are not allowed at this event. Although there is an area of our Haven that we will not be using, that somebody could, if they wanted to bring children, they could camp in that section and then just don't bring kids into the gate. So if somebody does want to come and they want to camp like outside of the festival area but still on the grounds and have their kids there, and swap out coming in and out or whatever, they can certainly do that. They need to get in touch with us and we can give them more about that, information about that, because we have a couple of local people actually that will be doing that, camping up on the hill with their children.
All right. When is the deadline for advance registration?
The deadline for advance registration is the 13th, which is 3 days before the festival.
June 13th.
Yes. So everybody has till June 13th